This week we're continuing our series on 1 Corinthians, and we've started a journey together through the book. Now, we're only doing about 5 to 6 weeks on the book, so we're only going to touch on a few different texts. We want to focus on those texts that speak in part about the edification of the church. That's the building up of each other, the building up of the church for the sake of God's kingdom, for the sake of our spiritual lives and our growth. And so we're talking about, last week we talked about in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, about edification through unity, and how Paul talks about being like minds, a common mind, and common speech, a common word. And really, as we go into chapter 2, we're reading the end of chapter 1 and all of chapter 2 we're using this morning. And if we were to read through, we'd see that theme continued by Paul. In fairness, he keeps going with that same theme. The end of our text talks about how we have the mind of Christ. The church, believers, have the mind of Christ. So we're like-minded. We ought to be like-minded. He talks about how when we speak in the Spirit, not with words that are recognized by others, but in the Spirit. And so we're like speech in witness and testimony as believers. Paul continues that theme as he goes chapter 1 to chapter 2, as we talked about last week. And I encourage you to look at these at home, to read chapters 1 and 2 together, all together. It's not a long portion of Scripture. Read it at home and listen for what God says to you in the silence of that moment as you're reading. Because the context of this, they need to go together. But there's another theme that emerges here, I think, from Paul for this morning, and you saw it. Steve had our series there. And Paul talks a lot in this portion, the rest of this portion, about understanding. He uses the word wisdom a whole lot, you'll see. He talks about our wisdom as opposed to God's wisdom, how they're different, they're not the same. And he speaks quite a bit about wisdom, and we find out about understanding, and we're going to look at that this morning. Now, not the understanding in the sense of comprehension. Paul's not so much talking about that most of the time here. He's really talking about understanding as in acceptance, as it relates to faith. And so, in that light, that sort of understanding, my point this morning is we achieve edification through understanding together. Through acceptance and acceptance of God, His Word, and His ways, even when they're hard to comprehend, hard to understand. Allison, thank you for your children's time. And some of us, I looked across at Kevin, he wasn't looking at me, but some of us make it really easy for God to count the number of hairs on our head. Or we're trying to give him an easier time, or I am. I won't speak for Kevin, I know I am. And so that's what's going on up here. But we're talking about what's going on in here and in here this morning. And we thank God for His understanding of us. And we seek to understand Him, and it's hard. And we'll talk about that. Now, I see the irony here in what I'm doing, because when we look at this text that Mariella read so well for us, and the rest of chapter 2 as well, when we look at that, we see what Paul's talking about, what he says about understanding, what about wisdom. We see that he's saying that we're not good at it. And so I'm using a text to talk about understanding God that talks about not understanding God and how we have a hard time. So I see the irony here. But we look to God for guidance this morning. Because although God seems to be so often countercultural as far as society is concerned, yet He remains completely relevant at every point in history. And we look to that God this morning. God's ways are not our ways. You've heard that before. God's ways are not our ways. At least not until we take seriously and we're intentional about that prayer. We so often pray, Lord, Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We strive for that. And yet His ways are not our ways. That's why we pray that prayer. Help us, Lord, in that. God says through the prophet Isaiah, as we heard a moment ago, Paul quotes Isaiah. Verse 19, God says, I will destroy the wisdom as it is now known. I will frustrate the intellect and comprehensions of the intelligent. God says through Isaiah, and Paul quotes. But the Message translation, I like how they put it. I like how Eugene Peterson puts this verse, quoting Isaiah. Paul says, God says this, I will turn conventional wisdom on its head. I like that. God says, I will turn conventional wisdom on its head. Now, I think that's more visible and true today, perhaps than any other time in history. The evidence of this. Because there are a lot of people in our world today that try so hard, so desperately, to rely on conventional wisdom. They're guided solely by conventional wisdom. And yet it's been turned on its head. For those of us who are believers, we know this. And it's sad. I find it very sad, and I could go on and on. I won't. But I can go on with this topic of science and faith, because it's my favorite topic. You can ask Kathleen, I've probably got 24 books on it. I really enjoy it. And it's sad that there are so many people who rely on this conventional wisdom and intellect that use their minds, use that gift of knowledge to try and disprove God. And it's so sad because these great minds could be used for great things in terms of technology and medicine and even ethics. And it's so sad that so often they're trying to do something they can't with conventional wisdom. They can't with anything because God is there. God is very present. There's a great physicist, Nobel Prize winner. I mentioned this to a few people already, but his name is Richard Feynman. Some of you may recognize the name. He's passed away. He was an agnostic at best. And he was talking to a friend of his, a believer friend, a theist friend, believing in God. And he said, it seems to me like, talking to the vastness of the universe, like this is just too big. You know, if we're the center of it, if God made it all for us, and everything that happens here, it seems to me like the stage is too big for the drama. Now, I wish you would have said it to me, because I know what I want to say is that the stage wasn't made for the drama, Richard. It was made for the actors. It was made so the actors could see the scope of the stage and get a glimpse of its creator. They could see how vast and endless the universe is and realize they serve an eternal God. Vast, magnificent. We get a picture of God in our universe. And the beauty of it and the scope of it. We see its maker. I thank God for this thing. This amazing picture we have that He's painted for us. And still there are so many people who struggle relying on conventional wisdom. Maybe it's put best in chapter 1, verse 21, where it says, the world through its wisdom did not know Him. Paul says, the world through its wisdom did not know Him. Talking about God. Christ. The Message translation again says, the world in all its fancy wisdom never had a clue when it came to knowing God. I will turn conventional wisdom on its head. Hasn't that always been the way God's operated? All through history? I'll turn conventional wisdom on its head? Isn't that the way God works? You know, humanity says, no, this is impossible, and laughs and balks, right? And laughs at the prospect of the impossible. And the Spirit says, you're going to give him the name Isaac, which means laughter. And it's not impossible. When humanity says, that's it, we're done, we're hemmed in, it's hopeless, we're doomed, the Spirit says, the army you see today, you'll never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. When humanity says, you have to at least take my armor, so you're not crushed beyond recognition, the Spirit says, no, it's a few stones in a sling, that'll be enough. That'll get the job done. When humanity says, Lord, we need more men. We need more men. We have 30,000. They have 300,000. 10 times more. Spirit says, well, let's try it with 100 times less. You won't have 30,000. You'll have 300. And Gideon's army wins the battle. 300 against 300,000. When the world says, when humanity says God has forgotten us, all is darkness and all is silence, Spirit says, blessed are you, Mary. Blessed are you, Mary. And blessed the child you care. You see, God has always turned conventional wisdom on its head. God has always operated apart from what we think is wise or that makes sense to us. He's always operated in that way. These are only a few times that I mentioned where God does that. There are so many more in the Bible, and still with all of these instances in God's Word, all of these times, still we read in verse 8 of chapter 2, none of the rulers of this age understood it. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. As it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no human mind has conceived, that's quoting Isaiah again, the things God has prepared for those who love Him. These things God has revealed to us by His Spirit. Verse 14, it's up here. This person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolishness, and cannot understand them because they're discerned only through the Spirit. We'll come back to this. But God is saying that He has revealed these things to us. And while we honor Him with our minds, and that's so important, He stirs in our hearts His Spirit. Stirs within us. Through a conscience that's under conviction, through a heart that is burdened for something or someone, God often stirs. John Wesley would say, this is how we know God. There's different ways we know God, and 4 sort of pillars. We know God through tradition and through Scripture, through reason, so our minds, but also through experience. This is how we know God. And we need help to know God, because He's hard to understand. He's inconceivable. He's incomprehensible. The first song we introduced to you this morning is, He's indescribable. He's incomparable. Not just who He is, but if we're honest this morning, His ways. His ways are so often for us hard to understand. That's because they're against conventional wisdom often. They're at odds with society, and that's what we know, is what we've grown with. That's one reason there are so many religions in the world today. These hard questions that are hard to understand, God's ways that are hard to understand. I said last week that there are thousands of different denominations within the church. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of different religions and spiritualities and cults in the world. Hundreds of thousands. And so many of them are derived from this understanding of, this is a hard question and it needs an answer. So this is the answer. Most of them exist because of this very thing, this lack of understanding, this lack of acceptance, that some questions are hard. That some questions are hard to answer. That an age-old one back from the ancient Greeks is, if God is all loving and all powerful, then why is there bad things in the world? It's a hard question. It's called, if you want a big word, it's called Epicurean paradox. But it's age-old question. But it's been talked about by some writers. My favorite writer talks about it, C.S. Lewis. I've used this quote before, I think. But Lewis says, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures. He speaks in our consciousness, but He shouts to us in our pains. It's His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Now, Lewis has a lot more to say about it. The Problem of Pain is his book that talks best about it. It's a great book. He's wordy, but it's a great book. And we're not getting into the question in depth this morning, because that's not what we're trying to do, to answer that question. That's another sermon, another time. All we need to do this morning is acknowledge it's a hard question. Why is there suffering in the world? And so many religions are based on that question, because they're not satisfied with the answers that we have in the Bible. And amid that confusion in our own minds, those questions we sometimes have, the whole time the enemy prods us and goads us. It's his oldest sin, it's his oldest trick. Eve, why won't God let you eat from that tree? Why won't God let you eat from that tree? Eve, does he really love you? He knows you'll become like him. You can be like God. That desire has been with humanity since the beginning of time, and half the religions out there today talk about that. You're God, I'm God, the tree's God, the water's God, everything's God. There's so much of that out there today. And you can be sure, friends, that the enemy will do what he can to play on whatever doubt, whatever question that we haven't come to understanding, to the acceptance of. He'll use them. He'll say, what's the problem with just exploring a little bit? What's the problem with testing the waters? He doesn't tell you the waters, the current will take you out with it. He says, look at the grass on the other side. Look how green it is. And probably it does look greener. Well, he doesn't tell you that it's astroturf. It's fake, it's man-made. The enemy prods us and goads us and tries to direct us. But God, there's one way. There's one God. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy to understand. But know this, friends, God is for you. God is for you. And thank God that he's counter to so much of this world. Thank God that he operates in my weakness. He makes me strong. Thank God that being knowable, he is knowable. He wants to be known personally, and yet he is the unknowable God. It's amazing. Thank God that this cross, that's a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Greek, our text says, it's salvation to the believer. This cross, this picture of death and suffering, has been made as something that's beautiful. A picture of life. The most unconventional thing is that God has brought life out of death. Paul talks about all these issues. He talks about how the Jews demand signs, the Greeks demand wisdom. It's not too different from today. People still look for signs and proofs today. And yet, if we were to pray that prayer, Lord, just give me a sign, I will believe. Well, then where's faith? Or if we pray, Lord, give me all wisdom, I want to understand you fully, then where's awe and wonder? And to be fair, they had all kinds of signs. How many signs did the Jewish people have? How many signs did Jesus perform? The apostles performed? Countless. And there's still a struggle of faith. And talk about wisdom. How much wisdom did the Greeks have? God went out of his way to call the Apostle Paul, a university-educated man, hard to find in those days. And he was called to preach to who? The Gentiles, of which the Greeks were part. They had wisdom and they had signs, and it didn't help. Not in the end. It's how we deal and how we respond to what God's saying and what God is doing. The problem is so many times we are guilty of either calloused minds or stubborn wills or hardened hearts, and I'm guilty of some of those myself at times. And I just pray for understanding. I pray for acceptance. Paul doesn't hold back. We're coming to a close. Paul doesn't hold back. Verse 26, chapter 1. Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for that. Not many were influential. Not many of noble birth. But he continues, thankfully. God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. He chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world to despise the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so no one can boast except through him. Let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. And we need to humble ourselves and understand that we can't do it all, we don't know it all, but God does and God can. And we look to him, and we accept him, and accept his ways and accept his will, and find fullness and purpose and joy and guidance in him. He's made it simple for us. We preach Christ crucified. Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. It's that simple. It's that simple. And people will still think Jesus sounds like foolishness in our world today. But he's become the wisdom of God, our text says. Christ Jesus has become, verse 30, has become for us wisdom from God, that is, righteousness, holiness, and redemption. That is most significant this morning. If we're saying that wisdom, talking about the wisdom of God, what does it look like? If it's different from the world, what does it look like? Well, it looks like Christ. He is, for us, wisdom from God, insomuch as he is our holiness, our righteousness, our redemption. What do those three words, holiness, righteousness, and redemption, have to do with wisdom? Well, the word wisdom here is the Greek word Sophia. Nice name. And it has more to do with how we live, how we derive our perspective, how we deal with life. So Paul is talking less about comprehension and more about application in our text. He's talking about acceptance, as I said before, and how we live. And we live in these ways through the Spirit, righteousness and holiness. What we've received is not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, so we may understand what God has freely given us. Verse 12 of chapter 2. Are you dealing with confusion in your life right now? Are you questioning something God is doing or allowing in your life right now? Come and pray about it. Talk to him about it. Do you feel too weak to handle what has come your way? Take comfort in what Paul assures us of. The foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. And thank God, the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. And I need that promise from day to day for me. That his grace is sufficient, that his strength is perfect, and that his ways are good and just. Lord, help us to accept that in our lives today. We're going to sing a chorus, and we're going to pray together. And whatever you're facing today, and you question maybe God and whatever you're dealing with, I invite you to pray about it. I invite you to talk to him about it. We're going to sing the chorus, simple chorus. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and his grace. Maybe you're here this morning and Spirit speaking to you. You've never made a commitment before. You've never chosen to follow God, to follow Jesus, to know Jesus as Savior. You can do that this morning. This place of prayer is open. People will pray with you if you'd like. I invite you to come and pray. Whatever you're dealing with this morning, bring it to the Lord. He's faithful. He's sometimes hard to understand, but he is faithful.